We'll bring you all the candidates right here. Your opportunity to meet them up close and personal on News Talk 99.7, WNTK and WNTK.com. Among those running for president, someone you may or may not have heard about. It is United States Representative Thaddeus McCotter. His district is in Michigan. Let's call them the western suburbs of Detroit. And he is running for president of the United States, one of the many Republicans in a very crowded field. Representative McCotter, welcome to WNTK. And you've got a Dartmouth Lake Sunapee connection.
Well, thank you for having me on.
We're glad to have you on. Yeah, you've got a connection to our part of the world.
Well, I like New Hampshire.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know members of your team have also, are also graduates of Dartmouth College, and we have a number of people in Hanover listening to our conversation this morning. We were just playing some sound that we got yesterday when Governor Perry was here. He did a meet and greet, kind of a town hall at a small business. Small business is the engine of our communities here, not only in the Dartmouth Lake Sunapee region, but the state of New Hampshire. I know you're a supporter of small business, but one of the points that the workers brought up to us, the fact that business is going overseas. Business is going to China, to Mexico. How do we reverse that when you look at big business with their lobbyists fueling a lot of the mainstream candidates?
I'm glad you bring that up. That's one of the reasons I'm running. Because you see, especially in Michigan, especially in manufacturing communities, what you start to see is the people who will not know the differentiation between the United States and Communist China. Communist China believes that it is a rival model of governance to the United States. They're taking aggressive measures to start challenging our strategic interests around the world. And when we watch, their trade policies are mercantilist. They're predatory. They will manipulate currency. They will cyber spy. They will counterfeit. They will dump. They will do anything they can to undercut American manufacturing in an unfair, and I would argue uncompetitive environment in this sense, that the United States is a free people. We understand that we need to have tax relief, regulatory relief, and energy policies to help make it more feasible and more attractive to manufacture in the United States. But you cannot compete with a country where they can spy on their citizens and put them in jail, where they can tell you what church to go to, where they can put you in jail for handing out Bibles. This is not a free people. It is not a free market. And so to my colleagues and many in the Republican Party, you have to simply point out to them and continue to hammer home the point that if you want to have fair trade within this nation, if you want to have equitable trade within this nation and with other nations, you can't simply turn around and pretend that Communist China is a free people or a free market. What we need to do to get this back on track is to challenge in a comprehensive fashion all their trade violations. We need to make sure that there's reciprocity of investment, so you don't have to go over and meet with a general in a suit to cut a special deal to get your company into that nation. And you also have to make sure, I would argue, that the beacon of liberty that is the United States should reattach human rights the same way to trade with Communist China, the same way we did with Jackson Vanik with the Soviet Union.
This is Representative Thaddeus McCotter. He is among the Republicans running for president of the United States. And if you're saying, well, I've never heard of him before, people are hearing about him, and you are showing up and gaining some momentum in the polls as well.
Well, see, I seem to be like a trout swimming upstream these days. We've seen a lot of people. Well, Governor Perry obviously made a big splash. But
sure.
The beauty of New Hampshire being the first in the nation primary, and the same with Iowa as the first in the nation caucuses, the voters take their responsibility for in the process of nominating standard bearers for the parties very seriously. They expect you to come to them and explain your positions for their consideration. It's an inherently grassroots operation at the present time, and I think that that's helpful to a candidacy like mine. It's been up for a month and a half, and I think that in the final analysis, it's also a very good test of candidates' abilities. New Hampshire's an open primary, obviously. Iowa's a caucus system.
Yeah.
But to have to be able to go in front of real working people and explain what you want to do to get this economy going, what you want to do for the security of the United States, strikes me as one of the beauties of democracy.
You were in Ames for the Ames straw poll. Is too much emphasis put on that? We've got our first in the nation primary status, of course, here in New Hampshire. But, did we attach too much importance to what happened in Ames last Saturday?
Well, I don't know that we do or we don't, because people individually attach the importance to it. Probably more people in New Hampshire know that the Patriots beat the Falcons last night than know who won the straw poll in Ames, Iowa. I know that more Detroiters are right now worried about Matt Stafford's shoulder heading into the season. So when we look at what people attach to it, it's largely the political class pays much attention to it. Now, my campaign, we've always viewed it as an introduction. We're not on the ground as many, like notably Governor Palente or others, were on the ground making it a test of their organizational skills. And I think it was a great opportunity to meet Iowans, to start getting the message out. And our goal, which was met, was to have people come ask us to come speak to their Republican groups or civic organizations to get in front of them, to be able to start spreading the message.
Congressman Thaddeus McCotter is a Republican candidate for president. He's from the 11th District of Michigan, the western suburbs of Detroit. A very tough place to be if you're looking for a job with unemployment the way it is. The housing market is soft all over the place, but particularly soft in that part of the world. We're all feeling the pinch. How do you turn this battleship around? We hear a lot of presidential candidates. We've had many through here on WNTK saying, I'm going to create jobs. I'm going to balance the budget. Well, let's start with jobs, Congressman. How do you make jobs?
There are two things that have to be done. We live in an age of a communications revolution where everything is leading towards self-government. In the federal government's position, the welfare state is imploding around us. If we're going to save social safety net, if we're going to make sure that we have a 21st century government, the welfare state has to be restructured into citizen-driven government. If you think about it, you can buy a good or service from a laptop or a BlackBerry from anywhere around the world in seconds. And yet the federal government wants to continue to try to make people who are self-reliant dependent upon federal benefits or largesse, which we know comes from working people. So the federal government has to be restructured for the 21st century, including entitlement reforms. Now, when you talk about the economy, something that a lot of the candidates, many of them who supported the Wall Street bailout, will not discuss for whatever reason, is that the central problem in this economy is the debt overhang. We are going through a great deflationary period. You have the big bailout banks on Wall Street that are not lending capital. We have the greatest credit contraction since the Great Depression. And when you talk about the small businesses that are the backbone of New Hampshire and of the United States economy, when you talk about the innovators and the workers that are not only going to grow us out of this current situation, but are going to shape the foundations of the American economy for generations to come, you need to have credit flowing. We've just seen Mr. Bernanke talk about continuing to keep interest rates low. We hear him talk about more quantitative easing. He misses the point that if the balance sheets at the big banks are not forced to restructure, recapitalize through debt for equity swaps, if their leverage limits aren't such that they can't implode again, if there aren't stress tests applied to them so that the unhealthy ones are broken up and their assets walled off, we're going to continue to go through a doomed generation economically the way Japan did in the 1990s.
Congressman, our money guy was on the radio yesterday with us and talking about doing a flat tax. He says 3% flat tax would solve everything. What do you think about flat tax?
Well, I think the biggest problem is the fair tax and flat tax people will have their debates. But we have to convince the American people that as we go through and continue to find that under the progressive income tax, almost half of Americans aren't paying taxes.
Right.
When you reach that point that more people receive a benefit from taxation than bear the burden, as a fiscal matter, as an economic matter, this country is going to be second-rate at best. So I would make the argument that the flat taxes and the fair taxes, and everyone who wants tax reform, it better start convincing the American people that the progressive income tax has to go. Once 51% benefit from it, you're never going to get a flat tax or a fair tax.
Congressman Thaddeus McCotter, our guest. He's a Republican candidate for president. He represents the 11th District in the state of Michigan here on WNTK and WUVR. What do you think of the Tea Party?
I think the Tea Party has been very helpful to the cause of fiscal conservatism. I think that they are obviously a separate entity, although there's crossover. You have Republicans in it, you have Democrats in it, you have Libertarians in it. So it's a very organic, spontaneous movement. But as I've said before, it has to mature as a movement in the same way that the Republican Party has to accept and to communicate and work with the Tea Party. Because if both sides continue down the path of either estrangement or continued infighting, what happens is the United Democratic Party, especially the left, will defeat the shared goals of both Republicans and the Tea Party.
Are there too many factions in the Republican Party to present a unified base to take back the White House?
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. People ask me, well, how do I identify myself? I say, well, I'm a guitar player and a Republican.
That's right. And how's the guitar doing? He plays electric guitar, by the way.
Well, the guitar's doing fine. I'm it hasn't broken down or anything. You know, I mean, it's granted I'm a guitar player, not a musician. I know the distinction.
As long as you don't have to play the guitar for money to pay the bills, but you know, we're not that bad yet as we wait for the stock market to open at 9:30 this morning. Congressman Thaddeus McCotter is the congressman representing the 11th district in Michigan, just west of Detroit. He has been in Congress since 2002. He's a Republican candidate for president, getting a lot of traction. You see him on the Fox News channel, on CNN, and it's a name to watch in the coming months, and we'll have him back on, of course, as the campaign continues moving into our primary coming up in the beginning of 2012. Congressman, a pleasure. Thank you for your time on WNTK.
Thank you so much for having me.